Stand by for action.
Drop your guns, everyone. And remember, I mean business.
What's your name, boy?
Joe 90.
An unusual name. What are you doing here?
I'm an agent for the World Intelligence Network.
Satisfactory. Most satisfactory.
Look, there are 600 people up there with about 40 minutes to live. Now, you can't help them, but I believe we can. Now, what's it gonna be?
It would seem that this Captain Scarlet is now indestructible. This presents us with the clear and exciting expectation that he will become our greatest asset in the fight against the mist rounds.
If anything else goes wrong, I want you to be ready to act immediately.
Well, that was no ordinary breakdown. We've got to get up there and help them, but fast.
Thunderbirds are go.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
Welcome to Puppets Go Boom! My name is Zarin.
My name is Patricia.
Yeah, and we are now finally at the episode where we're going to talk about Supercar.
Yes.
And so, we've just got off watching the final episode of this show, literally just minutes ago, and I have to say, what a ride this has been. And it's funny because our initial reaction to this is that we get this is like a 1960s show. We get that this thing has very dated references. But I've got to be honest with you, I've never had so much fun doing our own version of riff tracks watching this show that, and by the way, I might sound like I'm dissing this show, but don't get me wrong, we actually had fun watching this. I think this has probably been the most fun I've had watching TV with my wife.
Yes.
I have to say.
Yeah, so I guess we can briefly talk about it for those who don't know what Supercar is. So, yeah, Supercar focuses on a group of 4 people that are part of the Supercar organization, consisting of Mike Mercury, who is like the main driver of Supercar. We have 2 professors. We have Professor Rudolph Popkiss, who's kind of like the main man behind like making sure that
technically we have a professor and we have a doctor.
Okay,
so
yeah, that's true.
We have Professor Popkiss and we have Dr. Beaker.
Yeah, and not to be confused
with the Muppets.
Yeah, not to be confused with me. Not that Beaker.
He's named after a science instrument.
Yeah, pretty much. So, yeah. So Professor Popkiss is basically the one who is like behind on the making sure that everything is running fine on Supercar, making sure that Mike Mercury is able to take off, and he's also the one who cooks for everybody. And we have Dr. Beaker, who invents everything, and he's the absent-minded professor who's just constantly busy. And yeah, I mean, he's pretty much a prototype for a lot of scientist characters that would be in a lot of the Supermarionation shows that would come in later.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Beaker, I have to say, is a real enigma in this show. Like, he's just this kind of like genius who is very abstract and very awkward, and but he comes through in like the best of ways. Like, there's just throughout the show, like he always just seems to invent things that always get used.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every single time that you get to see an invention of Dr. Beaker, it will be used throughout the course of the series. Even though it's like, it doesn't work out. It sometimes blows up in his face, or it doesn't work a lot of the time. But it does work out, and he's actually praised for it. I mean, he has like the government coming by to him and saying, "Oh, we need your help with this invention, Dr. Beaker." I mean, there was one episode in which that they needed help with like transporting some tanks using magnetic forces so that they can be able to travel with ease. So yeah, I mean, his stuff is praised, but yeah, he's like that classic, crazy, kooky professor.
Yeah, and then we have Jimmy and we have Mitch, and so Mitch is the monkey. He's basically the animal sidekick.
Yes.
In all of this, he's the comic relief.
And then Jimmy is like the little boy who's alongside with them, because in the first episode, it's literally starts off with him and his older brother Bill, who are stranded in the middle of the sea and waiting to be rescued. And this is where Supercar first comes in, when they're literally building it, and that's how they were able to meet up. And Jimmy just been with them ever since, while Bill is an astronaut going up into space, or he would be doing underwater dives. So he's with them a lot of the time, and that just makes us wonder, like, where are their parents? You know?
Like we never. I mean, maybe it's the sad thing that Jimmy doesn't have any parents, and like he's just been relying on Bill effectively to bring him up, all on his own. standalone.
Yeah.
And which she's kind of started to think about. And maybe, like, you know, the Supercar team's the only family he's ever really had besides Bill.
Yeah.
I guess. And so it would have been more interesting. I guess if this show had longer to go. By the way, there's only one season of Supercar.
Well, technically there's two.
Well, technically there's two, yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. But yeah, it only had 39 episodes, which a lot of these Supermarionation shows had 39 episodes. I know that they wanted to do more seasons of it, but Lew Grade, who we'll be talking about a lot throughout this retrospective, who's like the main producer and the main contributor behind AP Films, and who basically helped with distribution of a lot of British television shows to America. And, you know, he wanted to have something exciting to come off of Jerry Anderson after the major success of Four Feather Falls. And so that was when they moved over to a bigger studio in Slough, and that was when they got a bigger budget at the time, which was £2,000 per episode. They were able to utilize some more of their puppets and going all science fiction and action and adventure, where before it was a Western. And so, yeah, they were hoping that, you know, maybe if the show was popular enough, it would get, you know, more seasons. But, you know, we have classic Lew Grade who said, no, let's just scrap everything and let's just start off with something bigger and better, which would lead over to Fireball XL5, which we'll talk about next time.
Yeah, and but the one thing I want to just kind of focus back onto is that we're not really talking about Mike Mercury in this. And, I mean, I gotta be honest, Mike Mercury is just your kind of like your heroic protagonist. Like he's pretty standard when it comes to you know, these type of like characters. So I mean, he is the guy who rides around Supercar. He's the one who like does all the action and adventuring and everything like that. Like I mean, besides that, I mean, like he doesn't really have much more characteristic besides that. Really, he's just kind of the hero.
Yeah, and that's what they were going for. It's like, oh yeah, let's just have the classic American hero that, you know, basically is riding around in Supercar, and, you know, he's the one who knows everything about it, and he's the one who saves everybody. And that's literally him. He's just hero guy. That's his entire personality. And yeah, I mean, they would follow this kind of same...
He's basically Terry McGinnis in Batman Beyond, effectively.
Yeah.
But, you know, Terry McGinnis, obviously, is a bit unfair because, obviously, he has more character. I would say Terry McGinnis has more character than I think Mike Mercury does.
Yeah, and a pretty tragic and pretty messed up backstory if you think about it. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, this is a prototype that they would carry on throughout the rest of the Supermarionation shows. You know, Steve Zodiac, Troy Tempest, the Tracy brothers, Captain Scarlet. They would
I would argue that you know the shows that came before, I think it came after, you know, Supercar. I think they had more chance to develop character.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He's the prototype of all the characters that would come in later.
I guess so, yeah. And I just think it's a shame, really, that we seem to throughout the show we seem to have, you know, focuses on episodes that focus more on Mitch, episodes that focus on Popkiss, episodes that focus on Beaker, and episodes that focus on Jimmy, or like even Bill, you know, gets, you know, his time to shine, you know, per episode. But, you know, besides the occasional dream sequence, and besides a few, you know, other like, you know, little sides that don't really get that much mentioned in the story, we don't really get like a Mike Mercury episode. Really.
No, not really. And you would think that because he's the main character, that, you know, he would get like a much more detailed focus on his backstory and, you know, how did he meet up with the guys behind Supercar, and, you know, like, you know, what are his quirks, what are his you know, what are his personality traits other than just being the hero. But yeah, we don't really get too much of that.
Yeah, and so we also get our villains, and which are reoccurring. You know, so we have Master Spy and his psychic Zarin, and so I mean, he's effectively just kind of your stereotypical, like, you know, foreign villain.
Yeah,
that's a lot of these shows back. Here's the thing about this: when people go and watch this show, and you've got to keep in mind, it really is a product of its time. So you're going to get probably the foreign, slightly racist villain, and you're probably going to get the side characters who are just, you know, are caricatures of like other, like, you know, ethnicities and of other people. And you got to keep in mind that sensitivities back then, I think, were not as they are now 60 years on. I think we've obviously moved a long way away from Supercar. Keep this in mind. I think that's probably the reason why there's only 2 episodes that made it to air in ITV right now. Like there's like episode 1 and episode 23.
Yeah,
I think are the other ones. The other episodes they're not on, and for good reason as well, because Mitch the monkey smokes cigars and cigarettes in this show, and other people also smoke as well, which obviously is not a thing that sort of happens today. If anything, we're moving way away from that.
Yeah, and not to mention that there's a lot of really uncomfortable depictions of cultures and races that oh god,
that just wouldn't fly today.
Yeah,
exactly.
Oh man, like, I was so uncomfortable watching some of the episodes like that depict some cultures that are completely not, unpolitically correct by today's standards.
Did we go to Central America at one point? I can't think we did. We met some characters there that made you feel uncomfortable about that.
That's right, yeah. When they went over to Central America and then they saw the natives, and it's like the most stereotypical natives you could imagine. Like, oh yeah, people in grass skirts and talking incoherently and living in huts. It's like, yeah.
It's so you just kind of like say you feel really uncomfortable watching some of the bits of the show. But I mean, besides that, the one thing, when you realize that it is what it is, that it is something that was made in 1960, you then sort of like move away from that, and you get to see like, the essence of like what the show was. So the idea is that they've basically created, the car of the future. It's Supercar. It can fly in the air, it can go underwater, it can go into space, it can go absolutely anywhere. And I think that's what's with the 60s being so fascinated with technology at that time. And like, it's funny because we've been talking about flying cars like for like 6 decades at this point, and we still don't have one yet.
Nope, we don't.
As of 2025, as of this podcast, we still don't have like, a commercially made flying car.
No, we don't. We don't have a car that can be able to hover like 2 feet, let alone like 500 or 1,000 or 50,000 feet up in the air.
Could you imagine how disappointed everyone would be in 1960 to know in 2025 we still don't have anything like Supercar in the future?
I remember when I was a kid and I would read off like those, what would it be like in the future? And it would talk about things like flying cars and eating food out of pills and being able to use teleporters so you can go to any place that you want. And if I would imagine like myself as a 39-year-old, it's like, oh, what's the future looking like now? I would be sad.
It was funny. I was talking with my nana about the illnesses that old people have, and I kept saying to her, like, oh, good grief, when I'm 80, 90 years old, that probably might be me in the future. And she says, oh no, they'll have cures for it then. It's like, well, man, what do you think they said about flying cars back in the time? And she actually giggled and agreed with me. It's very rare that actually ever I like politically agree with my nana, but that was one of the rare times we actually agreed. Yeah, things are just not progressing the way that she was promised back when back in the 1960s when she was growing up.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, but I mean, basically the premise of the show is again, it's a prototype of what would be happening in later Supermarionation shows. Is that you have a conflict that's going on, whether it's from the main bad guy of the week or some kind of disaster, and then it's up to Supercar to save them, and wacky hijinks ensue.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, because it kind of plays out more like a cartoon show, if anything, but it's puppets. And but they usually do try and make some sort of an attempt to, like, make it feel like it's somewhat real. I mean, this was I probably imagine, again, we've not seen, as of this podcast, we haven't seen Four Feathered Falls yet.
No.
So, I imagine that this is the prototype for, like, all the other shows that were going to come after that. Stingray, Thunderbirds, Joe 90s, Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons, things like that. So, you got the aspects of them using, like, real hands and, like, seeing put things together, and you got to see, them build, like, elaborate sets, by the way. Like, there are times where they are flying in the air in Supercar, and they actually do, like, see things on the ground which aren't stock footage. Sometimes they actually will build their own sets to show like what the ground is like and everything like that. But the one thing I will say is that they must have not had like the biggest budget, I think, to like put everything they wanted to put together, because a lot of the time, like when they're in the jungle, for example, like you see stock footage of like lions and giraffes and things like that, and I guess they probably didn't have enough time to like create all this stuff. So like in the studio that they had in Slough, I guess, at the time.
Yeah, and also there's a lot of stock footage of like planes and jets. Like you were even telling me that there was like stock footage of a particular plane.
Yeah, when they were like saying, "Oh, hey, we've got maximum security here," and they just showed the red arrows, and it's like the red arrows are like a stunt performance team of like fighters. They're not part. I mean, I guess they are kind of like are like RAF flyers, I guess, and everything like that. But these red arrows are not built for battle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, I think that because they were utilizing, at the time, a bigger budget, I'm sure that they had a lot more limitations that they probably had to work around with. Like, we're going to go to a jungle in this episode. Well, we don't have the time or the budget to build like a jungle from scratch. Okay, let's just put up a few trees and let's just just have, maybe a few huts here and there for like the natives and stuff like that. And the rest of it, we could just put in stock footage. Or, okay, we have an episode in which the government is going to be coming on by and they're going to be hiring Dr. Beaker to make some invention. And we're going to show stock footage of ships and planes and tanks. Okay, yeah, let's put that in there in a mixture of like some of the models that we have, or other things. But I mean, yeah, for the most part, I mean, yeah, I would say that with the miniatures that they had to work with and a lot of the creativity that they had to put together in terms of like, oh, we're going to go into space, we're going to go underwater, we're going to be flying up in the air, we're going to be doing all these really cool stunts. I mean, I'm sure that they were pushing the limits back in the day.
Yeah, unfortunately, they couldn't push the limits very far, I guess, with what they had, because there's just like, there was one episode where like Mitch the monkey was going to, had this like, fatal disease, and it looks like he was going to die. But the entire time he had a smile on his face, while he was dying. It's like, what? It's like it just took the seriousness of the situation right out of it. I'm sure if you were a child at the time growing up with that, you probably wouldn't, be thinking that. I'm sure your imagination would probably go elsewhere. But yeah, we just looked at it and thought, this is stupid.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of stupid, where do we start with some of the puppet designs?
Oh yeah, just it's you can tell they weren't all there yet with how you were never going to like make realistic puppets right off the first go, and I probably imagine they were when they were creating this. I think they still had this idea of like this cartoony design. That was it. By the way, I don't think we've actually watched the documentary for this yet, have we?
No, we have not. But
no.
But to be fair, we did see a documentary which covered like all the Supermarionation shows in honor of Thunderbirds' 50th anniversary.
Well, the main focus of it was Thunderbirds.
Yes, but they were talking about Supercar, and they were talking about that AP Films was starting. This was the first time they went over to the main studio in Slough, where they would create a lot of the Supermarionation shows for the next decade.
Yeah, but the design of the characters is forgivable because at the time it was just a prototype of everything that we're going to do before. Like when you watch this show, you can see, oh hey, this is where they got the inspiration for the Mistrons. This is where they got the inspiration for Stingray. This is where they got the inspiration for Joe 90 or some of the other stuff that they were going to do.
Yeah, I mean let's break it down. I mean, you have a lot of space and underwater adventures, which a lot of that would come from Fireball XL5 and Stingray. You have a little kid along with the adventure. That's Joe 90. You have there's one episode involving with like supernatural beings being able to control people and brainwash them. That's Captain Scarlet.
Yeah.
And then you have people going on adventures. That's Thunderbird. So yeah, this was essentially a prototype of what would happen later on, but they just didn't perfect it
Oh, so
yet.
they did rescue attempts as well, and that's also an inspiration for Thunderbirds too.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it's you can tell here that this was where the inspiration for all the other Supermarionation shows came from, I think. And also they took, inspiration from like various other sources of media too. But Supercar was effectively the primordial ooze that all the other Supermarionation shows came from.
Yeah. I think that another thing that they definitely did better in later Supermarionation shows is that the cast is not a complete sausage fest. I mean,
that's true.
I mean, you have Dr. Beaker, Mike Mercury, Professor Popkiss, Jimmy, and Mitch the monkey. They're all guys. And then we were saying like...
Yeah, everyone else is a guy pretty much in this as well. I mean, to be honest with you, like, the one stereotype they did in this is like, it's the tough, New York gangster, like, she, like, just, it's, and also, they give them also, like, New York, Boston accents in most of it. Like, there's no variation of, like, American in all of this.
Yeah, like, there's no Southern, like, Alabama. There's no Texan. There's no...
which is weird, really, because you think there's something a show like Supercar would really take off in the South.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. They take place in Nevada, so it's like around the Southwest. And yeah, I mean, you would think that they would like utilize a lot of the other accents if they were going to be traveling into different parts of the world. But
I think maybe at the time they didn't think it was going to be an American smash hit. I don't think they guessed it was going to. They thought maybe this is going to be for the UK.
Yeah.
This is going to be on ITV, and this is what everyone's going to be like. Around the UK is going to be watching. I don't think they had an idea that this was going to be a worldwide success.
And it was actually in the US when it aired on NBC. It was a modest hit.
Yeah, it was. was, and I mean, it gave them the oomph to kind of keep going with everything that we is going to be coming up next in this podcast.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, as for like the variety and the diversity, I mean, it's either like not really there.
I don't think after everything that we've seen in this show, would you really want more diversity? In this?
Actually, no, because other than as we said before, there's.
I was going to say like this. I'm really glad we didn't go to Africa. In this, could you imagine?
Oh, that would have been so terrible. I mean,
or even worse, imagine if we actually went to, if we did go to the American South.
Oh no!
Can you imagine how they? Yeah, because
I mean,
this is still when the civil rights movement was still going on.
Yes, it's right. Yeah, because the civil rights movement was from the 50s all the way up until the late 60s. So yeah, that would have been kind of uncomfortable. So yeah, I mean, I guess in hindsight, maybe there was a reason why they didn't include African American cast of characters interacting with the cast of Supercar.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Can you imagine if they did end up portraying them in a really negative way, or the NAACP would be outright trying to ban this show? Yeah, I think keep in mind that this is a product of its time, so of course it's gonna be problematic, and it is. I'm not suggesting that some of the things that were portrayed in the show were acceptable now. I mean they're not.
Oh yeah, I mean don't even get us started about when they went over to, was it China or Japan, in that little small island?
Oh yeah,
and it was like the most uncomfortable.
Mohang, I think his name was.
Yeah,
Mohang,
and it was like the most uncomfortable stereotypical.
What was the name of the Lotus something or other?
Yeah, like Lotus Blossom.
Lotus Blossom.
And I just thought of like, isn't that the character from Ninja Turtles? And I was like, no, they're completely different characters.
It just sounds uncomfortable when you like, but anyway, let's get away from that. The show obviously it's in black and white because obviously 1960, and Fireball XL5 was until they released like the first episode in color, like decades later. I mean, the show is in black and white.
Yeah.
And also one interesting thing as well is that the whole Supercar secret base that takes place in Black Rock, Nevada, is that it is actually the same set that Fireball XL5 eventually would become as well. So this was actually, funny enough, the prototype for, Space City.
That's right.
And the command center that was going to be there.
Yeah, so if you were to watch the same base for both of these shows, they are literally the exact same thing.
Yeah. And so, the one thing I would say, the music in this is very catchy. Like, Supercar. It's like if you listen to the intro, it's very, very catchy, and it tells you everything you need to know about the show.
Yes.
And the one thing I'll definitely say about it is that I really enjoyed the first intro before, because they then redid the intro with a chorus, and it sounds more like it sounds less like an action adventure show. It sounds more like I Love Lucy.
Yeah, it's funny because
it feels like it kind of takes a decade. It takes a decade step backwards.
Yeah, where you had like Mike Samms alone performing the song of Supercar in season 1. Season 2, his singers from his band were the ones who sung the song, and yeah, it just kind of feels a little bit off.
Yeah, I just think that he kind of feels like a downgrade.
It does feel like a downgrade. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have preferred him on his own.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
just like having like an orchestra, just kind of playing behind him, and so showing how adventurous it all is.
Yeah, absolutely, and he would appear in later performances in the TV series, because I believe that he also did the opening for Stingray as well.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, so yeah, he would come back. To sing the theme song for Stingray. Yeah. So, that just goes to show you about how talented he was.
Yeah, I think some of our favorite episodes, I think of it, is that there was one where they were captured by pirates.
Oh yes,
and there was that one, and I think the funny thing about that one was that it was so the pirate was so threatening. I mean, obviously we were making all sorts of jokes, because RuPaul Drag Race was kind of a big thing at the time, and so we were doing all sorts of things about that. But then there was one bit that takes you right out of the moment. This is the first time that Supercar uses a missile to blow up a boat, and we thought that this pirate was dead, but nope. Actually, there's one thing that we noticed in this show is that there's always peril and death with our heroes, but there's no peril or death with our villains. Our villains, every time they either get blown up or thrown down a cliff or seriously hurt or whatever, they just kind of it's kind of just fun for cartoonish fun. But then when it comes to our heroes, if they're dying, or like if they're either close to death or something like that, like that's portrayed as like, oh, this could be the end of our heroes. But when it comes to our villains all being like, battered and bruised and everything like that, or like, suffer the same deafening fate. There was one time we were actually discussing. Do you remember there was the episode with what was it? What was the name of the professor in the Lost City?
Oh,
that
yeah.
episode. You know what? That episode also I liked as well, because like the robots in that episode was so threatening, and then you had the extra excitement of like, oh hey, I've got this atomic missile that I'm going to aim at New York. I'm going to aim at Washington D.C. and I'm going to start a war. It's like, oh god,
yeah,
that was pretty cool when the whole thing was going on, because like what a setup. And this is a great place to put, all American Mike Mercury is going to stop the evil fiendish missile from blowing up America and their democracy and governments and everything like that. And so it puts 1960s Mike Mercury as like the real American hero and does all of that and turns the missile around and blows up the Lost City and everything. But the one thing that's interesting is that they never really made a reference that he was dead in that episode, and it's kind of hard to like say that he, any of our enemies, even when they seem to look like they meet their final demise, are actually gone in this show. I don't know if it's because they weren't allowed to reference death, or if there was something wrong about that. I mean, Captain Scarlet, all the time, like had characters that died in the show, but I don't think they were at the point where they could get away. I mean, they could get away with Mitch smoking like a whole pack of cigars, but they couldn't get away with like killing people. Yeah, apparently. Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, that's just a bit of censorship that I don't really understand.
Yeah,
because
the standards were very different at the time, I guess.
They were very different. And I guess it's to be expected because TV shows existed like less than a decade prior, so I guess that they were still getting used to about what was acceptable for television at the time.
I guess so, and but those were the exciting episodes that I really liked in this show. And I mean, the lesser episodes, there's the final episode, I mean, it's just, Mitch switching places with like a gorilla.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really kind of go that much anywhere, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like a disappointment because the previous...
It's better than a clip show.
That's true, and trust me, we will talk about the clip show episodes later on and how much they disappointed us. But no, instead, we have an episode about Mitch the monkey, who is switched over for a gorilla named King Cool, who is playing drums and is being locked up in cages, and he wants to be set free. But in reality, the reason why is because he's wild and crazy, and the only way to calm him down is when the song is being played, and so he can be able to just calm down and play the drums along with them. And so there's this massive switcheroo that happens where they think that, oh my gosh, Mitch, you've grown up, or King Cool, why have you shrunk him? And then they switch back and everything comes back to normal, and then they just play off with a song and dance, and then the episode literally just ends, and that's pretty much it. And yeah, I mean, it was a pretty lame episode to go out on, but again, it was better than a clip show episode.
That's true. And by the way, one thing I just want to point out here as well is that, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be people in the comments going to say, well, this happened in this comic book or in this graphic novel or in this audio book or something like that. We are literally just reviewing the show. We're not reviewing anything outside of that.
Yeah, and I know that the comic books and the audio novels would be more relevant in bringing a backstory for TV shows like Fireball XL5, Stingray, and with Thunderbirds. But unfortunately, due to wanting us to, take a look at the thing face on and just, analyzing it in its own way, we're just focusing on the shows first. And who knows, maybe sometime down the line we will listen to the audiobooks or read the comics and, see all the things that they were able to add into the characters and storylines.
Yeah. Some of the episodes, that was supposed to be like exciting, but you couldn't really take seriously. I mean, I got to be honest, the Runaway Train, even though some people like that episode, funny enough, I was actually reading online, some people actually do like that episode quite a lot, the Runaway Train. But when you look at it and you see like all this stock footage being sped up of like them going down the train tracks, you can't take it seriously.
I'm just thinking about Benny Hill.
Benny Hill, yeah. It's like it's just maybe in the 1960s it was probably exciting, but no, I don't think so.
I mean, I can understand.
It just looks silly.
It does look silly. I mean, there were times in which that they try to make it like something really serious that you would see later on in Thunderbirds, in which, oh my gosh, there's a hijack. We're stuck in the monorail and we can't get out, or we're in, this particular vehicle and we need to be able to go right before it crashes or something like that. At least with Thunderbirds, they were able to take it more seriously and it brought up the intensity. But yeah, like episodes like the Runaway Train, it just makes it feel like really goofy, in which like the train is going like 1,000 miles per hour and they're trying to stop it, and it's like just can't help but laugh.
One thing I'll say is that I actually do like the episode The Little Art. The one where Dr. Beaker gets the counterfeit, gets the portrait, and it turns out it's a location for like counterfeit plates.
Oh yeah.
That one was actually a really interesting episode.
It was actually, yeah. The fact that the painting was able to give a clue onto where the plates were, and it almost kind of like feels like a little bit of a mystery. It's like, okay, here are the clues into this painting, and it's going to lead over to like a particular treasure that was buried decades ago, and then you have these two guys who want to have the painting back when they realize that it was purchased by Dr. Beaker. And then when they were piecing the clues together, they were able to find it through their intelligence. And then Dr. Beaker, thinking that it was like a painting that was fake, he decided to like paint it over to like get rid of it so that it just goes completely blank. And then when they stole it, as time went on, the picture went blank. And so they decided that, what are we going to do? We're not going to be able to find the plates.
Yeah. There's some episodes like, for example, like there's the one episode where, Master Spy gets all the counterfeit money and he tries to buy Supercar, but when he finds out he can't buy it, he just ends up kind of like taking some gangsters and just shooting up the place anyway.
Yeah.
And like, you think this is like a top secret, Supercar laboratory. You think that the government or like the U.S. military would be guarding it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You think they'd be like, big, massive, metal, fences and landmines and things like that. You think, the one secret government project you don't want anyone to know about.
Yeah, and there was a previous episode in which Master Spy and Zarin actually found where the Supercar headquarters is. And you'll be thinking, oh, well, that means that they're going to have to move into a new location, right? Or they're going to have to up their security, but no, they don't. They never move from their location, and they never get extra security. So Master Spy and Zarin can go whenever they want to try to steal Supercar.
I don't know, maybe the idea was going to be that, somewhere down the line, they were going to improve the security, but maybe that just was like for another episode, I don't know. But,
yeah, and then there were some times in which there was a bit of mystery as to like what's going on, like the Phantom Piper when they go over. What goes on?
Yeah, that's one thing that's one thing we always laugh about every time we watch this show. Is like, where they say, what goes on? And we just say, what goes on?
What goes on?
What goes on?
What goes on?
Yeah.
Or whenever that Beaker says something repetitively like
most satisfactory.
Most satisfactory. Yeah.
Oh, it's just such a shit. This is the thing, like, okay, it's silly, it's, got problems with it, but, when you sit back and, it is a nice show to have, just have a good giggle about, and just have a couple of jokes as well, like, I don't know, maybe growing up with Mystery Science Kids to 3000, growing up with Riff Tracks, has probably, broken our brains a little bit, and, now we find anything that looks kind of, a bit goofy and silly, it has some sort of entertainment value behind it, because we can just make fun of it ourselves.
Yeah.
But, to be fair, this show, if you are going into it with just you want to have some fun with it, this is a fun show.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And also when we were watching through the show and we were pointing out maybe there's a reason why they didn't use a lot of female puppets in this particular series, because what were you saying about the episode in which Jimmy had the dream sequence about saving the princess?
Oh yeah, I don't think they realized that their eyes weren't facing forward, and so you kind of get this derpy kind of look on their faces, and it's is it Heidi
no, Heidi was the
aunt character.
Yeah, the aunt character. Yeah, that was Professor Popkiss.
Was it Wendy? Was it
Zizi?
Zizi, yeah.
Yeah, Zizi is the French girl that was trapped in the wine maker's basement, being essentially Cinderella.
Yeah, and somehow she ends up getting adopted somehow.
Yeah, she gets adopted by Aunt Heidi, who is Professor Popkiss's what was it, his sister, his cousin? I don't remember. But yeah, she's Aunt Heidi. And so, yeah, we do see her like one more time in which they were celebrating Mike's birthday, but it was a surprise party. And then aliens come by and give him a suit so that he can be able to levitate, and Supercar can be able to be controlled without the controls, or that the roof doesn't have to be activated via controls. And then Mike just flies up into the air, and I'm just thinking about like, oh, this is like the Pee Wee Herman show in which he wishes that he was flying. And we have that song segment of being the luckiest boy in the world, and then we realize it was a dream sequence. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the female characters, they do look pretty derpy.
Yeah, they do, and either that, like, they either portray them either as like, just like side characters, or they're villains, and women don't really play much of a big role in this show.
Yeah, or they're the damsels in distress.
Oh, they're the damsels in distress. That's true.
Yeah, but again, this is the 60s, and that's to be expected.
One other goofy episode, which, we just burst out laughing over, was a Space for Mitch, where, like, Mitch just blasts himself into space, and we just, like, when the whole thing happened, it was supposed to be, like, all dramatic, but we just had to stop and just start bursting out laughing, and that's when we had to pause the episode. This is just so stupid, and this is just so hilarious, because we made so many jokes about Mitch. Throughout this show, and then finally when we got to this point, it's like, I don't even want to say on this podcast all these jokes that we said about Mitch, but if you were watching it with us and we got to this episode and then we got to that moment, you'd understand why we were like pissing ourselves laughing.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I mean, the fact
we had to take a break to stop to laugh for a while, and then we had to start doing the show again. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. All I know is I enjoyed myself.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they were showing off a picture of a gorilla, which, by the way, I believe is the gorilla who actually was sent up to space and died.
Yeah, like, hey, Mitch, you want to be that guy? You want to die in space? Oh, good grief.
Yeah, and the fact that, and yeah, Bill was supposed to go up into space, and then Mitch went up into space instead because he wanted to be just like that chimpanzee who went up into space. For some reason, and he even got the spacesuit, which for some reason was in Mitch's size, and even though that Bill is actually one of the taller characters in the show, make sense. And then when he goes up into space, like, we have Mitch, who's like really excited at first to go into space, but then he starts panicking, and then he runs out of air, and then he's like slowly dying right before our eyes. And
probably the worst episode of the show has to be the day the time stood still. Like, they tried to make this about, like, everyone's forgotten Mike's birthday, but actually they're throwing him a surprise party. But then aliens somehow get involved and give him an award, and then he flies, like you were talking before, he flies off into the air, and it's such a there's too much stuff in this. It feels like this story kind of just got thrown in because they probably had some other bunch of stories that didn't make the grade, and they just thought, oh well, let's just throw this in just to complete the season. Like, it just feels that kind of episode. Let's just throw this in.
Yeah.
Because we need a story.
Yeah, the dream sequence episodes suck.
They do, actually, yeah. And even Jimmy gets his own. And you think that the Jimmy episode would be a good dream sequence, but if anything, it just kind of falls flat.
Yeah, the only reason why we laughed at that was not only because of Princess Derp.
Yeah, the derpy princess.
But also Mitch talks like a
Boston accent. Yeah.
It's like, hey, Dad, we're gonna go off and save the princess. Dad, it's like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, it's like it almost kind of feels like this was like a prototype for Sonic the Hedgehog. It's like, but so Mitch is not way past cool in this. I'm just gonna safely say that.
Yeah, but here's the thing: out of all the animal side characters that we've seen so far, Mitch is actually pretty useful because he does help out with saving everybody and even like knocking down some bad guys with a freaking horseshoe. Or like rescuing people, like whenever that, Mike was in trouble, and then Mitch would come back and he would warn Dr. Beaker or Professor Popkiss saying, oh, you have to come here. And then they would say, oh, Mike is in trouble. Let's go rescue him. So at least Mitch at some points in the episodes has been useful.
It just kind of feels weird, like you just, this gangster's holding up Jimmy, like has a gun to his head, and like, okay, in the next scene we have Mitch walking up with a horseshoe and knocking the gangster out with the horseshoe. It's like, it's just, Okay, where did that come from?
Yeah.
But then the one thing about this as well is that, and I get, the shows like this aren't really supposed to have continuity or consistency or anything like that. There's times that they make Mitch out to be somewhat intelligent, and there's other times they make out Mitch to be absolutely useless.
Yeah.
And which is it? Pick a lane. Is he, a monkey that has some sort of intelligence behind him, or is he just the goofy sidekick?
Yeah, I mean, even in the last episode where Dr. Beaker was saying constantly, monkeys are not as smart as humans and stuff like that. But then you see him playing the drums.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know if he's just repeating that from watching the King Cool stuff that they see on TV. I don't know, but it's just the one thing they do is that either the other characters have consistency to them. Jimmy is obviously the child that all the kids can relate to in the show, and you have Mike Mercury, who is the hero, and you have Professor Popkiss, who actually is very interesting in himself because he comes from a German background. He has a love for cooking. He has interesting connection with family members, and has some good advice to give to Jimmy and other people. He's the elder sage pretty much in this show. And then you have Dr. Beaker. I nearly called him Professor Beef. Dr. Beaker, who just has this really awkward background, but has his heart in the right place, and will come through for you in the end. And these are characters that all have consistency. Mitch the Monkey does not.
Yeah.
Mitch the Monkey just happens to be something when the storyteller wants him to be something.
Yeah. It's okay, Mitch is there when the plot needs him to be there. Sometimes he would sneak into Supercar, or sometimes they would put him in the trunk for hours for, who knows how is he able to survive without food, water, or going to the bathroom. I don't know. And, sometimes he's useful, being able to warn, either Mike or Popkiss or Beaker or Jimmy's this person's in danger. We need to help them. Or let me take you to where they are. Or, here's the bad guy. I'm going to hide in the background and see if I can take them out. Or there's other times in which he doesn't really do anything. He just panics, or he is off smoking Professor Popkiss's cigars, or he's eating a whole bunch of peanuts or something like that. It's not much consistency with the character other than he's just the goofy animal by the toys.
To be fair, he's not a by the toys character. I'm going to actually defend Mitch on that purpose. Is that, yes, he's a cute monkey, and if you look at him, he looks like a stuffed animal who would be on your, in your side of your bed, or on your, your drawers or whatever. But I would say that Mitch the Monkey is a bit more than just that. He is hilarious when he can be hilarious, and there's times when you and I just have to laugh out loud at some of the antics that he got into. He is actually really entertaining when he's comedic.
Yeah, so I will just say this: he's definitely better than Zuni.
We'll talk about Zuni when we do Fireball XL5. But the one thing I'll say about Mitch is that he is not just a character who just exists for the sake of existing, and he's just there to make the kids laugh. He can be more than just that. Where the characters actually do genuinely care about him, and he is actually part of the Supercar team, and Jimmy always gives him the time that he needs, and also Jimmy will stand up for Mitch when the rest of the team don't believe what he has to say when he's actually right.
Yeah.
Which is frustrating because it's Mitch the Monkey's actually telling you something that you should really know about, and all the adults just dismiss him, and it's up to Jimmy to justify his position in this. The one thing I will say about Supercar is that if you brush aside some of the silliness and some of the the goofiness of the show, there is actually a really good character dynamic going here. Mike Mercury is sometimes too hard-headed for his own good, and it is up for the other characters to kind of bring him down a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
And then you have Professor Popkiss, who sometimes gets a bit too house-proud, and or gets a bit too much into the moment, and then it's up to either Dr. Beaker, or it's up for Jimmy, or it's up for even Mitch, would you believe, to kind of bring him back down to earth. Same with Dr. Beaker when he goes a bit too far away to the edge, and then it's up for all these Supercar teams to kind of bring him back a little bit. So the character dynamics and the way that the whole team works amongst themselves is actually pretty good. It's dare I say, this is one of my favorite kind of super teams that I've actually seen in recent times.
Mm-hmm. And then you have Jimmy, who's the little kid, and he's naive, and then when he gets to see all the sacrifices that they have to do as a team of rescuing people, they have to realize that he realizes that, wow, there's a lot of things that I don't want to do, or that I don't want to hear that is going to be done, but I have to accept it. Like, there were even
you and I have watched some shows or even watched some movies where like they're trying to get this team dynamic going, and it just doesn't work because like they just don't know how to use the characters correctly. But dare I say, with the Supercar, I think they knew what they were doing here when they had this team together and they were going to do all the stuff that they were going to do. Yes, there's bad episodes. Yes, there's episodes, stuff that happens that that characters don't make sense. But at least in the majority of the time, the character, the team, acts like a team.
Yes,
and aren't just just a bunch of individuals going out for themselves.
Yeah, and I think that on the good episodes, you can definitely see the dynamics of how this team is able to work really well together.
We like it. This show might be from the 60s and might be very, very dated, but I think if you concentrate on those elements, I think you can learn something from watching this show.
Oh, absolutely. I think that you can learn about that. Every person has a purpose on what they can be able to contribute to helping out society and helping out people who need it. There are people out there that need help with something, and with one person they can't do it by themselves, but with a collective group of people with different strengths, that they can be able to accomplish fantastic things. And I think that that's a great lesson to take away from.
I'm really glad they didn't have like by the way, we'll talk about these episodes later on in the show, but every single one of these Supermarionation shows seems to have like, everything just gets destroyed and then all of a sudden we found out it's a dream sequence.
Oh, yeah.
And 5XL5 has one of those. Captain Scarlet definitely has one of those. That one's very, sticks out in your mind.
Stingray
has one of those episodes
they
too.
They have two of those.
Oh, yeah, good grief. And, but thankfully, Supercar did not really have that.
I mean, they've had like maybe two. One with Jimmy, where he's dreaming about saving the princess, and the other one about Mike with his birthday party. But
those aren't like Doomsday Armageddon episodes.
No, they're not.
All the characters don't die in these episodes.
No, they don't.
Exactly. Yeah, like in the other shows that we're going to be looking at later on in the show, those dark episodes do exist.
Yeah, and at least and thankfully this does not have a clip show episode.
You know what? That's the great thing about Supercar in this. At least they said, okay, we're going to utilize every single episode. Okay, some of them aren't so great, some of them are so great, but at least we're not going to have a clip show.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, we didn't have an episode where it's like, oh, hey, we're here for the children. Let's save the children.
Oh, yeah, like a dedicated episode for, let's bring a child in for the day and let's show them about what our organization is doing.
Well, they didn't really need to do that because they had Jimmy.
Yeah, but at least Jimmy is actually a character that helps within the plot, as opposed to like, oh, wow, I get to be a part of Supercar. I get to ride Supercar. I get to be alongside with Mike Mercury. This is the coolest thing ever. At least we didn't have that episode. Oh, trust me, when we get to Thunderbirds, we'll talk about that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, besides those, there was the hijack episode where, like, some random dictator wanted a Boeing 747, and so he decided to, like, hijack one for himself.
Yes.
And so that was that random episode. And
then there was even one episode in which that they went to Scotland, and they were trying to find out...
there seems to be a lot of these episodes where people go to Scotland in
like
Supermarionation shows.
Yeah, like, they remember, we'll talk about this when we talk about Stingray, but there was the episode when they went to Scotland to find the Loch Ness Monster.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I guess they really love Scotland. But anyway, they went over to Scotland because of the Phantom Piper, about like, oh, you have this ghost who comes in and plays the bagpipes. And, we have, the whole castle is haunted, what we're going to be able to do. And so, in reality, it's actually a guy who is disguising himself as like a ghost while another person is going by trying to steal this huge, what was it, like a giant diamond or something that's worth like thousands of dollars. And so, that was actually a pretty clever thing that they were able to do, where they were trying to disguise
the one thing we get laughing about in this episode is that, people will say, oh, I paid this amount of money for this. And we kind of just sat there and say, that's not so much money. And then we had to remember that inflation's sort of like been a big thing in the last 60 years. So we were like Googling like how much it would be today. And we were like getting to like points of like, oh, hey, it's like, it's like, oh, it's, thousands, millions, trillions. Yeah, it's a lot of money.
And then we're like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
It kind of reminds me, it's like, oh, I paid $20 to go see King Kong. It's like, that doesn't sound like so much money. Then you realize it's $300 today. Oh, but yeah, like, but it has that nice, genuine fun to it, doesn't it? Like, this is what people were excited about back in the 1960s: flying cars, adventure, kids, using their imaginations, monkey sidekicks, there was, dare I say, like, it's the one thing I like about Supercar. It's so imaginative, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it kind of captured the essence of what people were hoping for probably in the future. Like, people were like going to have their own supercars that were going to fly around in, like, in space and in water and stuff like that. I mean, like, sadly, that's not how things have turned out, but it was nice to see how, imaginative and how inspirational I think some people were, and how much Supercar captured the imaginations of a lot of people.
Absolutely.
To the point where we're talking about it today in 2025.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing interesting is that, with all the merchandise, I don't actually know how much, how well it received it was, if they ever did merchandise.
Yeah.
We've seen the Supercar toys, and good grief, they sell for, like, now on eBay, they sell for hundreds of pounds. They are collector's items.
Yeah. When we saw the Stingray documentary of the guy who has a lot of the old Stingray like toys and action figures, I mean, we were like saying, wow, that stuff is probably worth hundreds of thousands of dollars nowadays. Yeah, I mean, it's no exception. The Supercar toy that they released back in the 60s and the models, they're released hundreds of dollars nowadays. It's ridiculous.
Exactly, yeah. So, I mean, the one thing I'll say about Supercar is that, I mean, if it wasn't for Supercar, we wouldn't have got all the other shows.
No, it is, it's like you said, it is the primordial ooze of what would happen in later shows, and it should be appreciated for that, but it definitely had major growing pains. There were a lot of things that they needed to learn from, and I mean, it's to be expected because this was their second Supermarionation show after Four Feather Falls, and this was the first time that they ever dealt with something along the lines of it's taking place in like a sci-fi setting with action and adventure, because they did a Western before. And so they were learning new techniques. They were going underwater. They were going into space. They were flying. They were having a lot of these really epic adventures. And yeah, I mean, when you look back on it, it does feel a bit dated in a lot of ways, but you have to appreciate everything that it was able to deliver. And, a lot of the stuff that is both intentional and unintentional are hilarious. And I think that if you are going into this show expecting something like Thunderbirds, then you're probably going to be disappointed with it. But if you're going to go on it face on saying, oh, I'm just going to watch like a silly little show about these puppets, then I think you're going to have a great time with it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think in that case, I think we've talked Supercar through.
Yeah.
And we just say, go watch it because, if you set aside some of the negatives, it is actually quite an enjoyable thing to watch.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, like we said earlier, ITV only has 2 episodes of Supercars. So the only way you're going to be able to see the rest of it is if you buy it on DVD or if you want to watch it on YouTube, which all the episodes are up on YouTube.
Yeah. So we were going to end the show on that note. However, something actually has changed in the last couple of days, and that is the announcement that now, for those of you who do not know, there was a lost project that Jerry Anderson was going to do, which was called Hit Squad, and it's always supposed about what potentially would have happened if it was actually made. Well, Warner Brothers Animation and Anderson Entertainment have come together and have decided that in the true Supermarionation style, they're going to make Hit Squad.
Yes, that's
How
right.
incredible is that?
Yeah, so they're also teaming up with Hanna-Barbera Europe to also do this one. Warner Brothers Animation, Anderson Entertainment, and Hanna-Barbera Europe are going to be doing this major project together.
Yeah, it's going to be great, and so I'm really interested because the last time we actually saw an idea of what they could Anderson Entertainment could potentially do was when we saw the pilot for the Thunderbirds revival, and they did the whole puppet the whole Supermarionation with that, and demonstrated what they could do without putting strings on somebody. And so it'd be interesting to see how if they decide to bring in those modern techniques that they show how Hit Squad is going to be, or are they going to effectively go back to what they originally did back in that time, and they're going to show Hit Squad in that sense. I'd be very intrigued to see a Supermarionation show in 2025. Yeah, that's going to be something to see. What are they going to do with it, and how much is how much can they improve it from the original model that they actually read upon. I'm actually really intrigued.
Yeah, I'm intrigued too. I mean, we haven't seen something like this in a while. I mean, I know there's been a lot of Kickstarters to, to have a lot of the other Supermarionation shows that Jerry Anderson wanted to do, but was never able to do. And I know that those have been up on like various sources, and they didn't really catch on. So I'm curious as to see if this is going to be able to catch on. And yeah, this might be the first major true return since, I mean, people would argue like Terrahawks back in the 80s. So yeah, I'm curious about how this is going to turn out.
We'll see. But until then, everybody, we will see you for Fireball XL5 in the next episode.
Okay, everyone. Until then, catch you later.
Bye-bye.
Supercar, with beauty and grace, as swift as can be. Watch it flying through the air. It travels in space or under the sea, and it can journey anywhere. Supercar, supercar. It travels on land or roams the skies, through the heavens' stormy rage. It's Mercury man, and everyone cries, it's the marvel of the age. Supercar, supercar, supercar!